Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and Sonic the Hedgehog has had more TV adaptations than Angelina Jolie has adopted children. Some of them near perfect, like Sonic X, while others left a lot to be desired. But with Netflix's newest attempt, it's time to look at it and see if it's a supersonic success or goes the way of JFK, MLK, and the rap career of MGK. This will contain spoilers, so be warned. The show starts off simple enough, with Sonic & Co. fighting Dr. Eggman in one of his schemes, but instead of Chaos Emeralds, he's after something called the Paradox Prism. Everything goes to shit when Sonic ignores Tails and his friends' warnings, opting to go it alone without thinking of others. In doing so, he shatters the Paradox Prism, and the show's narrative truly starts. From the jump, it strikes a good balance between feeling like a Sonic game and its own original story. The characters are true to their in-game counterparts, and everyone acts as you'd think they would. They even continue returning to form with Knuckles' character like Sonic Frontiers did before it. No longer the big dumb brute for comic relief that he's been made into so much lately, he's back to what he was like in the adventure era. Headstrong and grumpy, but not altogether an idiot. The same goes for Tails and Amy. Tails is the genius we've come to know him as, and Amy the empathetic, grounded one. It's no surprise to find out that Ian Flynn was a consultant on the show, since the premise seems like something that would be straight out of a Sonic comic. Once the prism shatters in the battle with Eggman, Sonic is thrust into a dirty, grimy city soaked in crimson light with all the other anthropomorphic inhabitants stone silent, with these downtrodden look on their faces. Something seems to be wrong with his body, specifically his feet, as his shoes aren't responding properly to his super speed. He runs around the city looking for his friends while being chased by souped-up badniks, only to find Tails off in the distance. When he finally does catch up with Tails, all is not as it seems. This is where the series starts to show two of its positives. One is including little Easter eggs. The code to get into Tails' workshop is 1992, the year Sonic as a character was created. The other good thing is in its new characters. For Tails, it's not the Tails we know and love, but instead a lonely, angsty, friendless Tails with cybernetically enhanced mechanical tails, along with his two biological ones. This Tails, named Nines, never met Sonic. It was cursed to a life of being bullied and driven inward emotionally, retreating into his mechanically inclined mind to find answers to make himself stronger, rather than relying on the strength of heart Sonic had taught him in the main timeline. An interesting idea, and one they take with all the characters as Sonic meets them, but more on that later. Sonic Prime does an interesting version of storytelling for a Sonic property. Granted, nothing we haven't seen before in something else, but for Sonic, it is kind of new, where it will cut to flashbacks showing the lead up to the initial fight with Eggman, and we find out Sonic's kind of a dick. Just like in the games, he's brash, arrogant, and overconfident, but in this, he also disregards his friends' feelings in favor of assuming he's always able to handle things his own way. If this show weren't set in the game's canon, I'd be okay with this. A new take on an old character where new traits can be placed on Sonic for this new universe. But it isn't. The writers have stated this show takes place in the game's universe, so this shift in character for Sonic is jarring and not explained. The show uses Sonic finding these alternate versions of his friends to teach him about his faults and how he treated the originals. But since Sonic never had an issue in canon with that to begin with, it doesn't make sense in an overarching narrative where we're supposed to believe the events of the games have happened. That's when you realize this show isn't going to be without flaws. You can claim I'm taking my children's television show about a 3.5-foot tall super speed quippy blue rodent too seriously, but I tell you, shut up! Sonic goes on to meet a resistance force, led by this universe's Rouge and Knuckles. He also goes on to meet this universe's Eggman, or should I say Eggmen. Yes, there are 5 different Eggmen called the Council of Chaos that rule this world, all with their own unique designs, personalities, skill sets, and quirks. One's a sleepy old man, one's a baby, one is the petulant little emo brat that all of us Sonic fans were at one point or another, and one's an otaku, I think? And the final one's the closest we come to the original Dr. Eggman that we've all know and loathe. They're interesting, and a development like this seems in line with something we'd see in a Sonic comic, or even a Sonic game, but they're not in the show enough, and are, in my opinion, kind of underutilized. They have a fair amount of screen time in the first couple episodes, capturing Sonic, putting him through tests to find out what he is, since these alternate eggheads have never seen Sonic before, and even coming close to beating him, if not for the intervention of the Resistance. But they disappear relatively quickly and don't return until the end of the season in any meaningful way. They do have at their disposal a roboticized Amy known as Rusty Rose, and this caught me off guard. Netflix making a woman the antagonist and making her a threat? And this is arguably the best part about the series. There is no political or social pandering. Where other children's shows like Steven Universe, Modern Arthur, the upcoming Monster High all seem to be pushing a woke agenda for diversity points and internet clout, and modern adaptations of beloved classics like the new Velma series advertise themselves by tearing into their source material's fanbase, Sonic Prime doesn't care about that nonsense. The strong female characters are strong because they were strong in the games for the last 20 years. They're written no different now than they were then. The very occasional environmental message in the show is also natural to the story, since that's what Sonic the Hedgehog has always been about. Technology corrupting and polluting nature. It was never Captain Planet levels of go green propaganda, but it was a subtle message behind a fun game, and that carries over here in this show. Seems like Sega may have learned about the concept of get woke, go broke, and are avoiding it so that everyone watching can appreciate this for what it is. A fun Sonic story. Speaking of story, though, it does come to a screeching halt, much like Sonic's character model in Sonic Frontiers the second you release the analog stick, at Episode 4. Sonic is transported to a different universe, this one an underdeveloped jungle world, where he once again meets new versions of his friends and has to help them while they don't remember him. This entire part was boring and tedious. Not only is there no Eggman or no Eggmen, but for the last 3 episodes, we've seen this shtick, and it's already wearing out its welcome on a far less cool alternate version of the colorful cast of characters. This time, alternate Amy is the main antagonist of the universe, which they build up as a surprise, but you can see it coming a mile away. And because of this, you know this arc is going to fall into the "it was a misunderstanding, friendship cures all" trope. Now, inherently, there's nothing wrong with tropes. They exist for a reason, but if you can't do anything to make them unique or interesting, but instead just recycle ideas that have already been done before beat for beat, it's going to cause your audience to lose interest, even the most diehard Sonic fans like myself. Let me tell you, I would rather exclusively play Big the Cat's fishing levels in Sonic Adventure for the rest of my life than watch this section of the show again. It's that bad. But thankfully, it's only a couple of episodes long. Then we're back in the Eggman-controlled universe again. For 1 episode. Yeah, the pacing's kind of a mess here. A strong and engaging, if not a bit formulaic first 3 episodes, followed by 2 of the worst episodes of any Sonic show ever made. Back to the interesting world for only 1 episode. Then Sonic is whisked away to yet another universe. This time, a pirate universe. Yeah, at this point I thought I'd bottom out on my interest in the show. It felt like this was just going to be aimed at almost exclusively children, and I was wasting my time trying to find anything of value in it. But then, just like Wesker when he's impaled by the tyrant in Resident Evil 1, I was caught off guard. Sonic calls out the absurdity of a pirate universe, and I got my first actual laugh in this show. It took 7 episodes, but I laughed. To say leading up to this point, Sonic Prime's attempts at humor had been about as funny as a gender studies major's Tumblr blog? Yeah, is an understatement. But this brief moment of laughter got me back into the show and made me fall right back in with its crazy, even by Sonic standards, story. We find out this universe's Knuckles, Captain Dread, which is a super clever name by the way, I'll admit, is a pirate who rather than pillaging and plundering, just wants to party and have fun all the time. The complete opposite of the main timeline Knuckles for sure. And this dichotomy is interesting, especially because Sonic himself is a character known for loving to take things easy. That's why this works so well. Because even for Sonic, Captain Knuckles Dread is too laid back. And we find out it's because he truly was once a feared and evil pirate. But lost all his pirate heart when his hubris nearly got his crew killed. Sonic does what he always does though, and finds a way to reinvigorate Captain Dread again. Just as Robo-Amy and the Eggman's forces show up in this universe. A fun battle scene ensues. The show ends with Sonic being trapped between dimensions battling Shadow. Oh, right, Shadow's in the show. But honestly, only barely. Not enough for me to really gauge whether they're doing his character right or falling into the trap of making him an even more Vegeta-y Vegeta. All in all, Sonic Prime isn't the best Sonic adaptation we've gotten, but it does do a lot of things right. The animation mostly looks great. I do have some complaints about Sonic's zany movement and gesticulations when he's not running. That's not quite in character, but that's about it. Everyone else moves well, especially Nines, who uses his 7 mechanical tails in a way very similar to Doc Ock from Spider-Man, and it adds an odd creep factor when you realize this is an 8-year-old boy. The music's also hitting the mark. It's no late 90s, early 2000s butt rock like many of us older Sonic fans miss, but it's still bouncy, fitting, and well written. Not just generic throwaway background noise. While the jokes almost never land, the references do, like Big the Cat's citizen number in the Hell World being 1998, the year he debuted in the Sonic the Hedgehog games, and all the little sprite tidbits thrown in throughout the series. Hell, there's even a surprising moment when Pirate Amy is ready to straight up murder another pirate until Sonic tells her not to. Look, if I had to give this series a rating, I'd say it comes in at a solid 7 chili dogs out of 10. And I'll be waiting for Season 2, hoping it can keep up its momentum and get even better. But please, tell me what you think in the comments. I actually do read them, and I'm open to hearing out other people's thoughts. Until then, please like, comment, subscribe. I'm really trying to grow this channel. It would mean the world to me. Also, follow me on Twitter at BoltTheWord, and I'll see you next time on Words of Paradise.